In the blood-soaked trenches of World War I, where human courage seemed to reach its absolute limit, an unlikely hero emerged. Weighing less than a pound, with delicate wings and unwavering determination, a carrier pigeon would become the difference between life and death for hundreds of American soldiers. This is the extraordinary story of Cher Ami, the bird who would transform the brutal landscape of modern warfare with a single, miraculous flight. Carrier pigeons represented more than just a communication method. They were living technology that bridged human limitations. Their history stretched back thousands of years, with archaeological evidence showing their use in ancient civilizations. The Egyptians used pigeons to announce the rise of new pharaohs. Greek Olympic organizers relied on these birds to spread competition results across vast territories. During the Siege of Paris in 1870, these remarkable birds became a lifeline, carrying messages in the range of 100,000 when every other communication method had failed. The science behind carrier pigeon navigation was nothing short of miraculous. Unlike human messengers who could be captured, killed, or lose their way, these birds possessed an internal guidance system that defied understanding. Researchers discovered that pigeons used a complex combination of magnetic field detection, visual landmark recognition, and an inherited geographical memory. Their brains could process navigational information at speeds that would make modern computers jealous. Military pigeon breeding became a sophisticated art form. Special genetic lines were developed to enhance specific traits, increased muscle density, improved visual acuity, and extraordinary endurance. The racing Homer breed, like Cher Ami, represented the pinnacle of this biological engineering. Trained from birth, these birds underwent rigorous testing that would challenge even the most elite military recruits. A typical racing Homer's training involved progressively challenging navigation exercises. Young pigeons would first be released near their home loft, gradually expanding their flight radius. They learned to ignore distractions, navigate through varying weather conditions, and maintain course even under extreme stress. Some birds could be trained to fly through simulated battle conditions, with loud noises and visual disruptions designed to test their resolve. By World War I, carrier pigeons had become an indispensable military asset. The British Royal Flying Corps maintained over 20,000 pigeons during the war. Each bird was more than a messenger. They were living communication devices, carrying messages that could change the course of entire battles. Their small size, quick movement, and ability to fly low made them virtually undetectable by enemy forces. The 77th Infantry Division represented the true face of early 20th century America. Nicknamed the Lost Battalion and the Liberty Division, the 77th Division was also known as the Metropolitan Division because it was made up largely of New York City men, principally from the polyglot Lower East Side. Its members spoke 42 different languages or dialects. These soldiers came from every corner of New York City. Irish immigrants stood shoulder to shoulder with Italian Americans. Jewish volunteers fought alongside farm boys from upstate. Their diversity was their strength. But in the Argonne Forest, that strength would be tested beyond imagination. Major Charles Whittlesey embodied the complex nature of this new American military. A Harvard-educated lawyer who had traded his legal briefs for military orders, he was both intellectual and intensely committed. At 34, he was older than most of his men, with a calm demeanor that masked an iron will. His leadership would be tested in ways no military academy could prepare him for. The Argonne Forest was not just a battlefield. It was a nightmare landscape of technological warfare. Dense forests stretched for miles, creating a perfect environment for ambush and miscommunication. Modern artillery, machine guns, and emerging communication technologies created a chaotic battlefield where traditional military strategies collapsed. The soldiers carried equipment that would seem primitive by today's standards. Heavy wool uniforms, bolt-action rifles, and communication equipment that was more likely to fail than succeed. Each soldier carried not just weapons, but hope that they would return home to families waiting thousands of miles away. When the Lost Battalion became trapped, they represented the perfect storm of military miscommunication. Surrounded by German forces, cut off from supplies, and under constant threat of friendly fire, these 554 men embodied the brutal unpredictability of modern warfare. Their survival would depend on something as delicate and powerful as a single pigeon's determination. The moments before Cher Ami's flight were charged with an almost unbearable tension. By this time, the lost battalion had only had 2 messenger pigeons left. Each bird represented not just a communication method, but a lifeline, a fragile thread connecting 554 trapped soldiers to potential salvation. Major Whittlesey's hands trembled slightly as he prepared the message. He knew this could be their final chance. The message was meticulously crafted, a precise set of coordinates that would guide American artillery away from their own men. Each word was carefully chosen, each number precisely written to ensure clarity. The message read, "We are along the road parallel 276.4. Our artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it." Beneath the words lay the desperate hopes of men who had been fighting for survival for days. The first bird flurried off as a nearby shell went off, and his handler lost his grip on him. Now the battalion's fate seemed to rest upon a single pair of wings. When Cher Ami was released, the forest erupted in a cacophony of gunfire. The bird's initial flight was anything but smooth. Overwhelmed by the intense bombardment, Cher Ami quickly lost courage, seeking momentary shelter in a nearby tree. The desperate soldiers watched in growing anxiety, knowing each passing moment reduced their chances of survival. Private Richards, a young soldier from the lost battalion, refused to let hope slip away. With bullets whizzing past and artillery shells thundering around him, he made a bold decision. Abandoning the relative safety of his foxhole, Richards began climbing the tree, deliberately shaking branches to startle the frightened pigeon. His fellow soldiers looked on in disbelief, some thinking the stress of battle had driven him mad. But Richards understood something profound. This bird was their only lifeline. His unconventional method worked. Startled and motivated by Richards' aggressive encouragement, Cher Ami burst from the tree. The bird's flight path was immediately met with intense fire. Soldiers watched in horror as the pigeon was struck, tumbling momentarily to the ground. For a heartbreaking second, it seemed their last hope had been extinguished. Yet Cher Ami was not done. With a resilience that would become legendary, the bird quickly recovered, launching itself back into the sky. His trajectory remained unwavering, straight toward the American lines, carrying the most critical message of the trapped battalion. The first bullet struck Cher Ami's breast, creating a wound that would have killed most animals instantly. The impact was so severe that feathers and blood exploded in a crimson cloud. But the pigeon kept flying. Another shot tore away his leg, the very leg carrying the message cylinder, only hanging on by a tendon. Yet somehow, impossibly, Cher Ami continued. Each wing beat was an act of defiance against impossible odds. The bird flew through a storm of bullets, navigating by instinct and training. Military communication had been reduced to this singular, extraordinary moment. A wounded bird carrying the hopes of 554 men through a sky filled with deadly intention. The medical team that treated Cher Ami worked with a reverence typically reserved for human heroes. Army veterinarians performed delicate surgeries, treating the pigeon's wounds with the same care they would show a critically wounded soldier. General John J. Pershing, commander of the American Expeditionary Forces, personally ensured Cher Ami's care. In a war that had dehumanized so much of human experience, this tiny bird represented something pure, unquestionable courage without political motivation. The French military's decision to award Cher Ami was unprecedented. This medal, typically reserved for human soldiers who displayed exceptional bravery under fire, had never before been given to an animal. It was a recognition that heroism transcended species. When Cher Ami returned to America, he became more than just a messenger. He was a living testimony to the unexpected heroes of war. Newspapers across the country ran stories about the pigeon who saved 194 men. Children wrote letters. Veterans saluted. In a conflict that had claimed millions of lives, this small bird had become a beacon of hope. Scientific communities became fascinated by Cher Ami's survival. How could a creature so small endure such devastating injuries? Researchers studied his remarkable resilience, using his medical records to understand the extraordinary physiological capabilities of carrier pigeons. The U.S. Army Signal Corps, which had developed extensive pigeon communication units during the war, used Cher Ami's story to justify continued investment in these biological communication networks. His survival proved that sometimes the most advanced technology was a well-trained animal with an unbreakable spirit. Modern warfare has become a complex dance of satellites, quantum encryption, and artificial intelligence. Drones map terrain. Algorithms predict troop movements. Yet militaries around the world have a surprising backup plan: the very same biological communication system that revealed the position of the lost battalion to their allied artillery. China's military maintains active pigeon units. The United States continues research into advanced animal communication technologies. These birds, descendants of heroes like Cher Ami, represent a communication method that cannot be jammed, hacked, or electronically disrupted. In an age of technological complexity, the simplest solutions often prove the most reliable. Cher Ami's legacy is not just a story of a single bird, but a reminder that survival often depends on unexpected strengths. What other secrets might these winged messengers still hold?